So the question before us is, what would some of the impacts be if CNCS ceased to exist? Firstly, I would say that's probably not going to happen. Did a little research, and in March, President Trump actually approved a $1.06 billion budget. So for the time being, the organization is safe. That includes funding for AmeriCorps, FEMA Corps, and the National Senior Service Corps. So just to follow the train of thought, what would happen if CNCS were eliminated? Well, it would mean the dissolution of FEMA Corps, AmeriCorps, and the Senior Service Corps. It means state governments would lose some revenue because some of their revenue is tied up in supporting for these organizations. State governments would probably spend more on emergency response and support because FEMA Corps would be gone. 270,000 Senior Corps volunteers and 75,000 AmeriCorps volunteers would have to find some other way to volunteer. We would lose this national organization that helps kind of combine all these different goals of these community organizations and help focus the volunteer effort across the country. Now, our lesson here tells us Congress consistently identifies CNCS for budget cuts. I'm sure they identify a lot of organizations, but Trump actually, not only did he approve the budget, but there was a $33 million increase for AmeriCorps. So it's approved and increased. I think Americans have been volunteering for a really long time, and I don't think just because this organization ceased to exist that volunteers would cease to help. Certainly there would be some bumps in the road as we figured out how to go back to the way things used to be, but we used to have volunteer organizations more run by faith groups and local communities and local clubs and organizations. So I'm not a big fan of giant bureaucracies like this, and $1 billion budget seems like a lot of money. I would not vote to eliminate it, but I certainly think there's probably room for efficiencies and a better way of doing this. I'm always a fan of pushing this kind of stuff down to the state level rather than the federal level. Now, this video talks about one of the hot points in politics, which is abortion. And it's hard to have a conversation about this kind of thing without talking about politics, because the abortion issue is certainly divided along party lines, Republican and Democrat. I think the larger problem with organizations like this, these large bureaucracies with $1 billion+ is we're really in danger of money being funneled to one party organization's pet project or beliefs than another. So I think the issue of oversight is very important. I don't think this particular issue with the organization that was connected to abortions is a big deal. I think it's pretty clear that it's an isolated incident, but the oversight is needed. We need to make sure that these funds aren't used for political gamesmanship, so that we're funneling money to parties or candidates based on what certain people believe. That certainly steps outside the scope of what this organization should be. And here's an example of some of the ways I think this has already happened. There's a line item on their budget here for state commission support for over $17 million. Okay, so now we're funneling money to the states to support this, and I don't know, who knows what they're using it for, and I don't know what the oversight is. Another one of the goals for CNCS is to support military families. Okay, well, I thought the USO and Red Cross and other organizations used to do that, so now we've got some duplication in my mind. I think this is what happens. People get their own pet projects, and this group wants to do this, and another group is going to do the same thing over here, and another one over here. So we get this redundancy and bureaucracy that's kind of out of control in Washington. CNCS states that they operate through thousands of nonprofits and faith-based organizations in local communities. I think it's pretty clear that there's some bipartisan support here. This was started by President George Bush under the 1,000 Points of Light, and then Obama continued and made some appointments and expansions of the programs in his term. When I'm at the website here and I'm looking at the board of directors, looks like all the most recent board of directors were nominated by Obama, and their terms are coming up in 2017, 2018, 2019. There's even a woman in here, Mona Dixon from Tempe, Arizona. I wasn't aware of that. I did some research on her. She's a graduate from ASU, I believe. So, when we look at this, okay, now all these board members are probably Democratic leaning, and the organization may be leaning that direction. However, when Trump appoints new appointees, then it will probably swing the other way. So I think there's probably a back and forth pendulum swing based on who's in power. But if you look at the history of who's made the appointments and the presidential actions, it's pretty clear that it's been supported by pretty much every president in office. So again, when I'm looking at the organization, I don't think we need to eliminate it. I think it's got some good goals, and there's some good opportunity here to serve the country. One interesting thing is they just did rollcall.com did a Roe v. calculation. Since we did that, I thought it would be interesting to share. They calculated for AmeriCorps, actually, that for every $1 spent, they got $4 in value. So that's my analysis of the question at hand.